Let's talk about culture and Iloilo. I'm Maria Ressa and we're here with Eugene Jamerlan. Eugene, tell me, why are you passionate about Iloilo?
Well, I think it's the most important thing for me is when people ask me about Iloilo, is who are you? It's really your identity. What do you tell people? And when we started doing this about 10 years ago, I think we had to start with ourselves. We had to dig up and look at our family histories. And when I saw that, I compared mine with my friends. There were parallels in that a lot of them came from merchant families who had been doing trading, mestizo Chinese. And as we were going on and digging up all this information, we were coming up with so much material that we decided to share this with institutions.
Okay.
So we're now working with different schools, working with public school teachers, elementary and high school level. We are being helped by local universities, like University of the Philippines. They have a Center for West Science Studies.
Okay.
We are also working with 2 architecture colleges.
Great.
From the University of San Agustin and a local School of Arts and Trades, which is now a polytechnic college.
When you pull out to a bird's eye view, what does it show you? What did you learn when you really started studying it?
Well, it's funny because last week I just presented a paper. It is so amazing when you look at the history of Iloilo. There are so many records coming out, not from the Philippines, but from all over.
Right.
So from Okinawa, we found documents that showed Chinese mestizo communities all over the Philippines have been set up to do trading because the Okinawan Chinese were sort of like the neutral ground between China and Japan.
Okay.
So the Japanese Ming courts were doing business with Japan, very indirectly, because they had no diplomatic relationship between China and the feudal lords. So they had to go through Okinawa. And since Okinawa was actually a vassal of China, they had tributary obligations.
Okay.
And a lot of that was farmed out all over Southeast Asia. And we found Portolan maps that show there was a lot of trade activities in the Visayan area.
Okay.
So amazingly, all of these are coming out, and if it's all by inference, so that you start understanding who you are.
So from what you've said, commerce brought affected culture,
Yes.
mixed heritage.
Because, culture is not done in a vacuum.
Yep.
There's always something coming and going. So there are Okinawan documents that are showing that they also learned indigo dyeing from Southeast Asian archipelagic communities. So they were also learning from us.
Because this is a community of weavers?
Right. So there was so much interaction. You could see that in the kind of food that we're eating now. And then the food that's also being eaten in the coastal areas of China.
What about, when you say Iloilo, oftentimes you think haciendero culture. I mean, what is that? Where does that come from? And how is it play out in modern day?
Well, when you think about sugar, it didn't start until the 1850s. Prior to that, there was weaving and there was sapanwood trading. And a lot of the sapanwood traders eventually moved into the sugar industry. They were in fact the same Chinese mestizo families who moved to Silay in Negros and started doing the haciendas and the whole sugar industry.
I see.
But when you look back, it's really all these merchant families who stayed from the 14th, 13th century, and they stayed on, and later became the merchant sugar owners. That, when you look at the history of Iloilo, you cannot separate it from the history of Negros.
Correct.
Because they're all Nor can you separate the history of Iloilo from the history of Cebu. because the Visayas is really very amorphous. There's so much interaction between all these islands.
And if you pull out big picture, what does it show you? What's your main insight when you look at all of that?
Oh, the richness of heritage, the shared language, the shared beliefs. We have 10 epics that are passed on orally from generation to generation, and from that you can pull so much. It's the richness of all these ideas and belief systems that kind of shape who we are. The late Dr. Henry Funtecha said that the Iloilo dialect was developed out of trade and diplomacy.
Trade and diplomacy.
Yes. You always had to accommodate people. So in a way, the kind of language that we're speaking now is it's really like a mestizo language, which developed around the river area.
The river area. That seems very similar to the Pasig River
Right.
and how it. What are the similarities and how does that affect the culture again?
When you're around the river area, you speak Sina, which is what I speak. But you cross the river over to Uton, they speak Kinaraya, which is an archaic dialect. In other words, the kind of language that we're speaking in the city is really something that developed like a pidgin language, so that everyone could understand it. It was really simplified, like a Bahasa Indonesian, if you will.
Yeah. Except that was mandated by the government. So
Yeah.
this is organically grown
Very,
from this
very
area.
organic.
And then how does this play out today in Iloilo?
Well, there's so much development going on that as heritage advocates, the private sector felt that we needed to emphasize our unique identity. So we had to reach out. We had to go and show people the documents about who we are, and for them to appreciate this. You can't do hard sell.
No.
You really just have to show them.
And for the schools that you're working with, does this help identity formation for the
Oh yes.
kids today?
Yes, it does. The 4 students that I worked with a few days ago were working on adaptive reuse with heritage structures. And I said, the best way to do that is come and visit one.
Okay.
So they went and saw an 1865 house, but it wasn't just a shell because the family was still living there. And what we've done in that house was we brought back the art of drinking chocolate. And so they sat there and they drank chocolate and they ate pancit molo and they had a wonderful time. It was the most natural thing for them to do, and they appreciated it. And then in the afternoon, they stayed for about 4 hours. In the afternoon, they wrote me a note and said that it was something that opened their eyes
So
to the possibilities.
you're making history come alive and connecting
Yes.
it to present day.
Yes.
How does all of this play out? So now Iloilo is a city competing for tourists. How does this play out in getting tourists to come here?
I think the most important thing for any kind of tourist center is to educate the locals. They are your best ambassadors. For them to appreciate what they have, to be proud of what they have, and then everything will just follow once you have them.
So for somebody who isn't from Iloilo, whether foreign or domestic tourist, what is a must-see? What are the must-sees that we should go to here?
Well, you have to see the weaving houses. You have to go and get up early in the morning and try the kakanins. All of these are interconnected. The kakanin vendors used to ply their ware in all the weaving houses because all the weaving houses
Correct.
they were working women.
Yes.
They didn't have time to cook. So they can see the relationship of all this, that they're still there. And then once you go to experience it, of course you have to have the bok choy, you have to have the pancit molo.
I will have that.
You have to have all these different kinds of soups that we have, tinoong and all that.
I will do all of this. Thank you. Any last thoughts, last words?
Oh yeah, well, I hope that all the things that we're doing right now will come to fruition. That maybe in 10 years or maybe in 20 years, when we look back, we'll say that we did good.
APEC is coming next year.
Yeah.
How will you take advantage of it?
Oh yeah, we'll be there. You know, we've already set this up, and we're working very hard to get the locals to join us
Fantastic.
and be active participants.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank
We've been
you.
speaking with cultural advocate Eugene Jamerlan. Thank you. Join us. Hashtag share Iloilo.